Thank you for your patience. I'm just going to ask you to be a little bit longer. IT has asked us to recess the House for 5 minutes. The record is very important to the House, and we are unable to record sound at the moment, so they're just working out the sound. So please bear with us. This Honorable House is now recessed for 5 minutes. Thank you.
One, two, one.
I call this House to order. Thank you, members. The Assembly will now resume its sitting. I suppose that the power and the woes of technology. So we thank you for your patience. Hopefully we have it all worked out now. The Assembly continues.
Announcements by the direction of the Speaker.
I make apologies on behalf of the Single Island-wide Electoral District member, Mr. Kyle Hodge, the member for Valley North, Shelia Rogers, the member for Valley South, Deanne Kentish Rogers, and the Single Island-wide Electoral District member, Mrs. Quincy Gums Marie, for absence with reason. Thank you, members. Good morning again. Today we gather in this hallowed chamber to pay tribute to a native son of the soil, a quiet, humble gentleman, a nation builder, an Anguillan pioneer, stalwart and patriot, Mr. Evans Harrigan. Mr. Harrigan was sworn in as council member on July 26, 1972, and would have served as the member for East End from 1972 to 1976, alongside the Honorable Father of the Nation, James Ronald Webster, Mr. Reuben O'Neill Hodge, Mr. Edwin Wallace Ray, Mr. Emil Rudolph Gums, Mr. Camille Edward Connor, Mr. John Waddington Hodge, and Mrs. Idalia Britannia Gums. Mr. Harrigan was very passionate about Anguilla and its development. He recognized that in order for Anguilla to progress, it required an all-hands-on-deck bipartisan effort, and understood the sacrifices that had to be made in order to achieve this growth, while still preserving the Anguillan way of life. I knew Mr. Harrigan in a personal capacity, as a family member and a devout fellow Anglican Christian. But I am indeed honored that I also had the privilege to personally meet and speak with him in 2021 in an official capacity on the occasion of the 45th anniversary of the establishment of the Anguilla House of Assembly, about his work as a member of the Anguilla Council. Throughout our conversation, I was particularly touched by the high level of respect he held for his esteemed leader, the Father of the Nation, James Ronald Webster. Even though it had been several decades later. In addition, for each achievement he recounted, he never hesitated to express how grateful he was to the people of Anguilla and to his fellow council members. He made certain that I knew they were serious about the business of Anguilla, and recalled times where the council carried out a series of strikes, refusing to pass legislation until concrete proposals for advancing Anguilla's constitutional status were made. His advice was clear and precise, and his resounding message with regards to unity still registers in the fore of my mind today. A message which we can all draw from as parliamentarians and as individuals. There's a Pakistani-American actor by the name Shaz Khan who said, and I quote, "A true patriot is not someone who practices patriotism. It is someone who has the ability to ignite the similar feeling in other people," unquote. This statement is reflective of Mr. Harrigan, who was able to convince his entire workforce of 32 men to give back 2% of their weekly wages to the government's treasury to help develop the island, and for which we are entirely grateful.
Thank you.
As you may know, Mr. Harrigan also oversaw the construction of many government buildings at that time and was very instrumental in the implementation of a national land registry for Anguilla. As a result, he was able to record on the Anguilla map what we now know as Gibbon Point, situated between Little Bay and Sile Bay in the District 2 constituency, which he represented. It is upon the shoulders of great men like Mr. Harrigan, a patriot of our nation, that we as parliamentarians stand. It is said that the true patriots of history are people who greatly loved their country and found that the best way to show this love was to fix and transform and inspire it into something better than it was. I am therefore reminded of the words of the famous American Senator Daniel Webster, who said, "Let us develop the resources of our land, call forth its power, build up its institutions, promote all its great interests, and see whether we also, in our day and generation, may not perform something worth to be remembered," unquote. In the words of the patriot, Mr. Harrigan, whose life we now pay tribute to and celebrate today, let us promote that which unites us. For there is always more that unites us than that which separates us. And there is strength, great strength, in unity. Amen. Mr. Harrigan, I again salute you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I now invite you to share in the recording by Mr. Harrigan.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker, and to the House of Assembly and the general public at large. Madam Speaker, in my opinion, I think we have come a long way in these 45 years. Although, as I say, we might have gained very much in that 45 years, but we went through it, and we know the ups and downs of the situation. And we are grateful for whatever did happen within that term, because we knew that it could have been also in the reverse of what it is now. And therefore, we have to thank God for all that. As a matter of fact, we all work collectively, not a special rule as such for East End or West End or so, but we all jointly collaborated together, and each one helped out each other where necessary. Your ideas could go along with the others, and so on. That was, as it were, not a part of a section thing. Island Harbour took Island Harbour and so on. They all worked jointly together. And we had, well, there were those who had very specific jobs, and they say jobs, I mean places that you take departments, maybe one or two in a department, say a hospital. It will be in perhaps John Hodge and I, rather represent someone else and so on and so on. But collectively, we all work together. Not as nowadays, you see, each person striving to gain the monopoly of the a collectivity of persons is very much lacking in the services, because nowadays it seems that each one, I know each one has a different role, but somewhat as it were tearing apart from the main facts. And we like to see a country unity, unified country, not a Harrigan country putting aside for different reasons. Because in the first 3 years of the council, every member of the council worked voluntarily for free, without a penny, and when the month is up. But in some ways, he had the same responsibilities. We were called out at evening, night, and at any time when members of the British came in to ascertain what is going on and to find out what is going on. We were called out from the various little jobs that we might have had. And we were called to meetings, sometimes even up in the late night. We were called out to represent ourselves to the government, how things are going, how things are going. And at the same time, as I said, we're trying to build a constitution, which we had none. And we were stealing from other countries part of their constitutions to make a constitution for Anguilla, to suit Anguilla. I worked as a foreman for our government in several buildings and so on, of which I could name a few. The airport building, the house, the government house in Valley, which is composed of many officers, police, customs, and very many more. They all had their heading, the post office, and so on. The house of Assembly too was in it, and so on. We had to do some of everything because, and for nothing. Nevertheless, I never to forget it. I've gained a wealth of experience in those 4 years. Not having gotten monies or the values of money, but a wealth of experience. I can remember too often too many things of which we gain experience from the governments, interacting governments, and Speaker, there is one outstanding one of the members. I always give kudos and congratulate him. So that's our man of business, Mr. Ronald Webster. He was on the pinnacle of everything. And we all looked up to him for guidance, and he looked down to us for help in every way that we could give him help and so on. But the others, we all agreed and so on together. And so on. We all work collective and good. But I tell you, we could always look up to himself, Ronald Webster, for his very good knowledge, although he didn't possess a diplomat's or high standard education, but he had enough to fool some of those high educated lords. Speaker, I will implore and state that I wish every success to the members of this House and any that's coming after. Because I know the role, I imagine a part of the role which you all have to play. Because it isn't easy when you're having someone over your head telling you what you should do, and you want to see that that's not the right way, and so on. So that's my advice, that they try to work together for good, for the good of the island, for the good of the state, for the good of the nation, and so on. I wish them every success in going forward. For the nation, the people of the island, we only hope that God's hand will guide them all through their life and trying together to bring a better Anguilla for the people of Anguilla and for the world. Madam Speaker, I wish to congratulate the House of Assembly and all the members of Parliament which is at present sitting. And I wish them every success in the future.
Thank you.
And we wish to thank Mr. Calvin Harrigan, his son, who assisted in helping us to get this recording done, and of course, Mary, who is always there. Thank you so much.
Hello? God and God alone created all these things we call our own. From the mighty to the small, the glory of them all is God and God alone. God and God alone reveals the truth of all we call unknown. And all the best and worst of man won't change a master's plan. It's God and God alone. God and God alone is fit to take the universe's throne. Let everything that lives resolve its truest praise for God alone. And God alone will be the joy of Orion alone. He will be our one desire. Our hearts will never tire of God and God alone. God and God alone is fit to take the universe's throne. Let everything that lives resolve its truest praise for God alone. God and God alone is fit to take the universe's throne. Let everything that lives resolve its truest praise for God and God. Let everything that lives resolve its truest praise for God and God
So beautifully rendered. Anguilla National Choir. From the Anguilla National Choir, Miss Dweniqua Proctor. Thank you, Dweniqua. And now to formally acknowledge the honorable members of the Assembly, former members of the Anguilla House of Assembly, Mrs. Pamela Van Webster, Mr. Claudel Romney, Mrs. Donna Banks, Mr. Clive Smith, Mr. Osborne Fleming, Commissioner of Labor, Ms. Joanne Hodge, Permanent Secretary, Dr. Aidan Harrigan, the family of the late Mr. Evans Harrigan, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you. We now render tributes from the members of the Assembly. The Honorable Single Island Wide Electoral District Member, Mr. Jose Vanterpool, is recognized.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. Adopting the protocol that you would have already set forth, I still want to say a special good morning to my colleagues in the gallery, the House of Assembly staff, the past members of the House, the dignitaries, and in particular, the family of the late Mr. Harrigan. Thank you for joining us here this morning. Madam Speaker, I thought that as one of the younger members and the person who would have probably known him the least, that I would get up early and share my remarks. In fact, Madam Speaker, I did not have the privilege of knowing Mr. Harrigan through a personal capacity. In fact, most of what I would have learned and gathered about him would have been since his passing, and more specifically in the recent days leading up to this event. And the more that I had the opportunity to learn about Mr. Harrigan, his contributions to the East End community, to Anguilla at large, to the legacy that he has left behind, the more that I wish that I had the opportunity to have met him while he was alive, Madam Speaker. In fact, I was conveying to one of the family members that at some point I would need to come around and hear some stories and get some feedback and some insights from him, Madam Speaker, to better understand what it was like. So I'm very grateful to you for sharing the video, as well as to his son and all family members for putting together such a video, Madam Speaker, because I believe it should not only be preserved for posterity and the history, but in times when we may forget from whence we came or stray away from the principles for which he advocated, that it may be played for us as a useful reminder, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as someone who looks towards a future that we all know is uncertain, I can only imagine what it was like and what challenges needed to be faced by leaders at a time when Anguilla had just gone through a revolution. When we don't have the power of technology, where our foundation and future may not have been as certain, but to step up to the task and say that I want to lead and I want to leave this place a better place, Madam Speaker. Something that I believe that we all as elected members and all elected members before us, all persons who stand for elections should, if not definitely do, want to achieve, Madam Speaker. I believe that his legacy truly speaks for itself. Going from the Anguilla Council to now 45 years of the Anguilla House of Assembly is no small task, Madam Speaker. Half a century, the legacy lives on. He was instrumental when it came to the introduction of the land registry system, Madam Speaker, which, might I remind us all, recently celebrated its 50th anniversary here in Anguilla, Madam Speaker. These are contributions that are not just felt at the time that he made them, but lived on for generations to come, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm proud of the contribution that he has made, and in fact, I'm refreshed and re-inspired as a young parliamentarian to want to leave such an indelible mark going forward, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I'll end by saying his legacy will not only be remembered and should be celebrated, but it will continue to live on through his family and everyone who he continues to live through, Madam Speaker. Family and members who I can see living on and walking towards making contributions to a better Anguilla, Madam Speaker, towards pushing this island to the next stage. So I ask us all to remember the words that he would have shared with us, remember the spirit of unity, because as he would have shared, I still believe in order to move this country to the greatness that it can achieve, it will take an all-hands-on-deck approach, Madam Speaker. Once again, to the family, I would like to say thank you, because not only would he have had to make sacrifices, we know it's too of a sacrifice on the family of the representatives. So for everything that you have done, for everything he has done, and for everything you continue to do, thank you, and may we continue to build a better Anguilla together. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Single Island Wide Electoral District member, Mr. Kenneth Hodge, is recognized.
Madam Speaker, good morning to you and to colleagues on both sides of this honorable house. Good morning. Also take the opportunity to say good morning to the gallery, to the past members of this assembly, to the civil servants who are here, and especially, Madam Speaker, to the family members who have joined us in this honorable house this morning. Madam Speaker, it is an honor and a privilege to stand in this honorable house today and pay tribute to the legacy of the late Evans Harrigan. Madam Speaker, the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 5 and verse 16 lays the foundation of my brief presentation today. It reads thus: "In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Amen. Madam Speaker, we saw this light shine in all facets of the late Evan Harrigan's life and contribution to this society, Madam Speaker. Much has been already said and will be said today in this honorable house about his valuable contribution to nation building, Madam Speaker, in the areas of politics, social, cultural, spiritual, Madam Speaker. And I take this opportunity to endorse all of that, Madam Speaker, without having to rehash or regurgitate all of it, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, through it all, his humble disposition and the fact that he was always willing to share his knowledge and skills to the education and upliftment of others was an outstanding hallmark of his life, Madam Speaker. And I think we were all touched to find out on the day of the national funeral, Madam Speaker, the fact that he would have passed on his skills of carpentry to his son, who would have constructed this casket in which he now lays at rest. Madam Speaker, the late Evans Harrigan was a pillar of the Anglican Church in all respects, Madam Speaker, and I would have had the distinct pleasure, Madam Speaker, to have been an organist at that church, St. Augustine's Anglican Church, many, many years ago when he was an active member of the church choir. And Madam Speaker, his distinct baritone voice, Madam Speaker, would have resonated on many a Sunday morning and other occasions at church, and we will long remember his contribution in the singing ministry of the Anglican Church. Madam Speaker, I fondly remember that a good portion of my childhood days, and that along with my brothers, would have been spent up on the hill by Cousin Mary. And Madam Speaker, it was a pleasure on the weekends for us to have traversed up and down the hill, visiting many of the elders in that community, Madam Speaker. And it was a blessing and a pleasure to hear so much of that ancient history that would have been shared at those times. And I think it was during that time, Madam Speaker, that I came to know Mr. Harrigan quite well and his family members. You know, I went to school with his son Calvin and his wife Lynette as well. So they were well known to us, Madam Speaker, to my family on the father's side, so to speak. Madam Speaker, as we said earlier, much has been said about his contribution to Anguilla's development, particularly in the various areas of politics and social development. And Madam Speaker, of special note, I highlight today his involvement in the development of Anguilla's land registry system, which this month marks 50 years. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, a week of activities under the theme 1974 to 2024, 50 years of growth and development will begin here this week. And I take this opportunity from my seat in this honorable house to encourage members of the public to share in those activities throughout the week. Madam Speaker, to his wife and the wider family circle, I leave the words of Alfred Armand Montaport. The monument of a great man is not of granite or marble or bronze. It consists of his goodness, his deeds, his love, and his compassion. Madam Speaker, may the goodness of the late Evans Harrigan, his good deeds, his love for mankind, and his compassion live on forever in our hearts. Madam Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Member for Road North is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning to my colleagues of this honorable house on both sides of the aisle. Good morning to all joining us in the gallery this morning. Thanks for being here with us. Madam Speaker, I never had the privilege of meeting the late Mr. Evans Harrigan and knowing him personally, but I always thought it fair that we always pay homage to the trailblazers and those who laid the foundations before us. And all that we've heard about Mr. Harrigan in the last few weeks has definitely proven him to be a trailblazer and one who has definitely laid the foundation for all of us who are here today. And his contributions to Anguilla, Madam Speaker, are well noted. He served as a member of the Anguilla Council from 1972 to 1976, and in a definite time and period when they were definitely going through growing pains. Like I said earlier, Madam Speaker, a definite trailblazer. Madam Speaker, I just want to join in expressions of gratitude for the impact he made during the Anguilla Revolution and after, and indeed throughout his life. Without people like him and all our other trailblazers paving the way for us, we would not be experiencing many of the privileges that we enjoy today. On behalf of my family, myself, and the entire Road North constituency, I express my condolences to the family and to all who mourn the passing of Mr. Harrigan. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Member for West End is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning to all in the gallery, my colleagues on both sides of the House. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, I too did not get to know Mr. Harrigan personally, Mr. Evans Harrigan personally. But what I do know, Madam Speaker, is that you don't have to know someone personally to appreciate their contributions. And when we think about Anguilla's history, we love to talk about history, where we came from, to tell us where we're going. And a lot of it goes back to that period that we call the revolution, back in the 60s. In fact, the revolution probably started before that, Madam Speaker, but it came to a head back in 67. I am fortunate, Madam Speaker, that I was born in Anguilla at that time, the early 60s, and when the call came for children and women at the front line, I'm happy to say that I was one that was called. Again, although, as I said, I did not know Mr. Harrigan personally, I felt that we were on the same team. The fact that he talks about working collectively, at that time I probably didn't appreciate what I was doing. But as time would move on, we learned to realize we've all got a part to play. And that's all Anguillians, Madam Speaker. Not just those who stay here on the island, but those who take the trip abroad to invest in the future of Anguilla and Anguillians. And I think we need to respect that, Madam Speaker. This morning I picked up an old lady walking from West End. She was heading to the East End. But like in the good old days, you didn't wait for a lift. There was not a lift. You used your feet. And I told her where I was going. And she said to me, but why don't we give them the flowers while they're alive? And she's right, Madam Speaker, because she said that we might be talking here, he cannot hear us. I said, but at times it's about the family as well. And I think that's a message that we, all of us, should appreciate. We talk about those who made sacrifices back then, but they made sacrifices not for their own personal benefit, but for their families, Madam Speaker. And today in Anguilla, and as we go forward, we need to put our hands on our hearts and ask, are we doing it for our interests or the future of those who are yet to come, in respect of those who paid a price back then when some of us were not around? I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Member for Road South is recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And thanks for all of you for coming out this morning, and also for affording me the opportunity to say a few words on behalf of myself and my family. I too join some of the members in this House in saying that I've never met Mr. Harrigan in official capacity, even though at a ripe old age of 97, he was honored for his contributions to Anguilla. 97. 97. And a century is a very long time. And when you think about it, we were never satisfied with the relationship that we are plunged into in the 1800s with St. Kitts Nevis Anguilla Federation. And in 1967, it came to a head. In 1967, we had a revolution. In 1967, we had an election. In 1968, we had another election. In 1972, we had yet another election. And in that election, as you know, Anguilla was known for what? Voting and voting. But in 1972, when we had that election, the Island Council came to being. And in that Island Council, as I listened to the names that were listed by the Honorable Speaker, I recognized some of those names. Camille Connor, Camaro Hotel in South Hill, across from Mings now, as we know it. I recognize that name very well because I remember as a youngster he had a lot of goats, white goats without horns. So, but Madam Speaker, what I'm saying is that these gentlemen made a tremendous contribution. And when I listened to the fact that Mr. Harrigan insisted that his workers pay a 2% levy to the government of Anguilla for development of this country, it said to me that these people were really, really patriotic, extremely patriotic. And I want to say something. I have an uncle who is 97 years old by the name of James Freddie Hughes. And I visit him very often now because that time is coming. I think that I sat here and listened, and when Mr. Harrigan was announced that he was there, I sat there with regret that I never had the opportunity to actually sit and speak to him, because I like to think that I'm a student of history. And I always like to hear the history directly from the horse's mouth, because even in the issue of the revolution, whenever you speak to any person who was around at that time, you get different variations of the same story. You know, so I'm still trying to piece together what is really fact. But I sat there with regret. And I want to say something about building for the future. And you need to build for the future. My uncle, who is 97 years old, came by my home about a year and a half ago. And he came to ask me for a plant that I have in my yard, a plum tree. And I said, but uncle, this plum tree is going to take between 7 and 10 years to bear. And you are 96. He said, do you think I'm planting this plum tree for myself? And I sat back and I realized what he was saying to me. Even though he was coming for this plum tree and he had no hope of ever eating from that plum tree, the foundations, the fruit was being planted for another generation. Amen. And so to the family of the late Evans Harrigan, I want to say thank you, because your father, your grandfather, your uncle, your great uncle, your community member, and persons of that ilk, they laid the foundation. They planted that plum tree many years ago so that today we may eat. So on behalf of a grateful family and a nation, I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Member for Sandy Hill, Leader of the Opposition, is recognized.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Speaker. Good morning to the members of this honorable House, former parliamentarians, family, friends, and loved ones of the late Mr. Evans Harrigan, who is here with us in the gallery today. Madam Speaker, on Saturday past, I would have delivered a statement on the passing of Mr. Harrigan at his funeral. And I'd like to expand a bit on that statement that I gave. And I will have stated, as many know, that Mr. Harrigan was the last surviving member of the first Anguilla Council. And when we think about the first Anguilla Council, 1972 to 1976, it reminds us that those of us who sit in the House of Assembly today stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. And our role is to continue the path of development for Anguilla. Patriots like Mr. Harrigan would have paved the way for us to be where we are today. And Madam Speaker, I can only imagine the awesome responsibility of drafting a constitution for your country. And I can only imagine the awesome responsibility of setting up a land registration system for the people of Anguilla in a place and time where persons would more than likely have had modest means, but were in possession of land. And so many would say that Anguillians in those times would have been land rich and money poor. And Madam Speaker, the words of "we are off to build a new Anguilla" are so poignant when we think about the role that Mr. Harrigan and others would have played at that point in time in the development of Anguilla. And I can only imagine as well the personal sacrifices that the children and the family, and his wife in particular, of Mr. Harrigan, the late nights that he would have been out working for the development of our country. And so I wish to personally thank the family of Mr. Harrigan for lending him to us for those many years. Thank you. On a personal note, Madam Speaker, I knew Mr. Harrigan growing up as being my grandmother's neighbor. I knew him as being a member of the St. Augustine's Anglican Church and singing in the church choir. And his framed photograph is displayed at the Hope Center, which is located in the Narson House at the entrance of Sea Feathers, as an elected member of East End. What I did not know until some time after was that Mr. Harrigan and my grandfather, Jimmy Richardson, would have worked together in Curacao at the Hess refinery all those years ago, before his return to Anguilla. And he is also the godfather of one of my uncles. And so, being a neighbor, being a godfather, close family ties, one of the hallmarks of the East End community, Madam Speaker. It was so then, and it's still so today. And the video of Mr. Harrigan just displayed almost made it seem as if Mr. Harrigan is still among us today, sitting next to Marie Horsford on the left-hand side of the St. Augustine Anglican Church on Sundays. And At his ripe old age, he has continued to give insight and sage advice to all of us as parliamentarians. And what was very significant to me, Madam Speaker, was that while I sat as Minister of Home Affairs, Ms. Horsford would have attended my office and would have indicated that Mr. Harrigan, as an administrator of an estate, wished to transfer significant lands as roads to the government of Anguilla. And so even in his 90s, Mr. Harrigan was still concerned about national development, developing Anguilla as a nation. And it is so interesting that his career started dealing with lands, and at the end, he was still concerned with ensuring that Anguilla had the lands that it needed. And so, Madam Speaker, I wish to extend profound sympathies to Mr. Harrigan's wife, his children, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. And may the memories and the legacy of Mr. Harrigan continue to live on in the hearts and minds of all Anguillans. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Member for Island Harbor, the Premier of Anguilla, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning to you, Madam Speaker. Good morning to the members of the House, the staff of the House, to former Chief Minister, Mr. Osborne Fleming, other members of the House, to the family of the late Mr. Evans Harrigan, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen in the gallery, those watching and listening. Madam Speaker, it's an honor for me to stand here today, and unlike some of my colleagues, I can say I know Mr. Harrigan personally. And that was no small feat because, you know, when we were growing up, we were afraid to go near Mr. Harrigan because, you know, he was a towering gentleman for one, but he also, he was a carpenter and a builder of coffins. And so it was very scary to go past his house, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I mentioned that at his recent funeral, and I had several calls and messages from persons who said that I awoke repressed memories in them, and now they couldn't sleep on Saturday night because of me, Madam Speaker. So I continue to, you know, cause angst for some people in Anguilla. Madam Speaker, this is not a funeral today. We are celebrating the legacy, the life of a fallen patriot, an Anguillian through and through, who meant the world of good for this little island of ours that we call home. And so, Madam Speaker, the Anguilla Act was passed in the UK Parliament in 1971, which made provisions for the administration of Anguilla through the appointment of a commissioner and allowed for elections to be held for the Anguilla Council. On July 22 of 1972, Mr. Evans Harrigan of Pondside, East End, was one of 7 men elected to the Anguilla Council, which was led by the father of the nation, the late James Ronald Webster. But, Madam Speaker, who was Mr. Evans Harrigan? He was a husband, a father, grandfather, a carpenter, a builder, a Christian, a good neighbor, a friend to many, a stalwart. Madam Speaker, he was a gentle giant, quiet, except when he needed to be heard. He was a humble man. Mr. Harrigan was not meant for political life, but he heeded the call when his country needed him. He was well respected by his community, and those who knew him knew that he was unwavering. Mr. Harrigan realized that the momentum of the 1967 revolution had to continue, and the gains made must be solidified in a constitution. Anguilla could not be returned to the government it did not want. Anguilla's status as part of the associated state of St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla impeded and hindered any meaningful economic development and investment in Anguilla, and created a sense of frustration among the people of Anguilla. Mr. Harrigan set about to help to draft a constitution for Anguilla, setting up a lands registry and advocating for a greater measure of internal self-governance by the people of Anguilla. Mr. Harrigan was not one for the limelight, and so after ensuring that Anguilla was going in the right direction, he stepped away from politics, but continued to work for Anguilla, building schools and other government buildings. But he continued to make recommendations and suggestions and advise Mr. Webster and others on policy and community and nation building, even after his short stint in politics. It is noteworthy and mentioned earlier that through much of his tenure in the Anguilla Council, Mr. Harrigan served without pay and persuaded other members to do the same. He always put country above self and instilled others with the same values. When recounting Anguilla's history, Mr. Harrigan did not toot his own horn. He barely mentioned his accomplishments except when specifically asked. His love for Anguilla and his love for his fellow citizens was very apparent in word and in deed. And even in his 90s, he kept up with what was happening in Anguilla and in the region. Madam Speaker, when I became interested in politics, Mr. Harrigan would visit my office, not because he needed medical attention, but to talk about Anguilla. He did not spend much time being nostalgic about the good old days, but was concerned about the lack of progress in Anguilla, the decline of social norms, and respect and decency. He would speak of the way forward, Madam Speaker, and what he saw as priorities. And so I can only imagine that is how he spoke with Mr. Webster during his tenure on the Anguilla Council and his meetings after, with his quiet but persuasive voice. Mr. Harrigan even taught me a thing or two about medicine. Madam Speaker, he researched prescribed medicines and herbal medicines and challenged me on the benefits of one versus the other. His arguments, I'm sure Calvin would know that, his arguments were intelligent, well thought out, and backed up with testimonials. And I can only imagine his interventions in the Anguilla Council. He was very convincing, Madam Speaker. I imagine he grew frustrated when things did not happen as fast as he wanted, because he was a man more of action than words. Mr. Harrigan was meticulous and a stickler for detail. I would have mentioned at his recent funeral about seeing him at work as a carpenter. Mr. Harrigan did not believe in the saying, you can hide it with the paint or the varnish, or as we would say now, you can hide it with the plastering. If he made an error, which he seldom did, he would remeasure and recut rather than filling it in or covering it up. On one occasion when he was building a coffin, me with my smart mouth, being about 7 years old, I said to him, Why don't you just leave it? The person is dead and it won't matter to them. He said, it won't matter to them, but it matters to me. It reflects my work. Such was the character of Mr. Harrigan. And one cannot measure the mettle of a man, Madam Speaker, until he has lost a loved one. Mr. Harrigan lost a daughter. He lost a grandson. He then lost a son. And yet he persevered. Like Job, he maintained his faith, Madam Speaker. And we can all attest to the strength and character of the man. The heights by great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward in the night. These words, Madam Speaker, by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow represent the late Mr. Evans Harrigan. Because he cared, Madam Speaker. He cared about his family, he cared about his community, he cared about his church, he cared about his country. Today, we honor the legacy of the man, his sacrifices, his patriotism. And it's the least we can do as a show of respect and gratitude. And so I was happy last Anguilla Day to present on his behalf the Anguilla Badge of Honor and the King's Certificate. These awards are small tokens, Madam Speaker, demonstrating a grateful nation. The national funeral last Saturday was a sign of respect. And it was said earlier, Madam Speaker, we should have been saying this while he was alive. But to the family of the late Mr. Evans Harrigan, I want to thank you for his contribution to the political and social development of Anguilla.
Thank you.
And for the lives that he has touched positively and the legacy that he has built. May his soul rest in peace. God bless you. God continue to bless Anguilla. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. Thank you, members, for your contributions.
Selection by Mrs. Amelia Van Poel-Kubich.
improvisation. Good morning. Firstly, I would just like to thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to share in this very special session. Uncle Evans, as he was affectionately called, was my great uncle. As was said before, he was a member of the Anglican Church. He was a member of the choir and a member of the St. Augustine's chorale for as long as I can remember. As a matter of fact, into his latter years, he was a member of both the choir and chorale. So on behalf of both entities and the family, I present this selection entitled My Tribute to God Be the Glory by Andre Crouch. And I would also like to thank Lennox Vanderpool for accompanying me this morning. How can I say thanks for the things you have done for me? Things so undeserved, yet you gave to prove your love for me. The voices of a million angels could not express my gratitude. All that I am and ever hope to be, I owe it all to thee. To God be the glory. To God be the glory. To God be the glory for the things He has done. With His blood He has saved me. With His power He has raised me. To God be the glory for the things He has done. Just let me live my life and let it be pleasing, Lord, to Thee. And should I gain any praise, let it go to Calvary. To God be the glory. To God be the glory. To God be the glory for the things He has done.
Very well done, Mrs. Amelia Vanterpool-Kubish, and so ably backed up by musical maestro and teacher Lennox Vanterpool. Thank you.
Family response by Mr. Clem Theo Hodge.
Good morning. I would like to accept the protocol already established and thank you all for hosting this tribute to our Uncle Evans, for many, a father, a revolutionary, and I would like to say thank you, Speaker, for allowing me the opportunity to represent on behalf of my family. In addition, I'd like to thank the members of the House of Assembly as well for being here, for your kind words, and for reflecting on the life of Mr. Evans Harrigan. In addition, I'd like to thank all of the members who are in the gallery, in addition to all of those listening via social media and telephone, radio, sorry. Lovingly called Uncle Evans by family, relatives, and friends, he naturally became the patriarch. In a very positive and unforgettable way, he touched the lives of many, whether as a tailor, a carpenter, a supervisor, a contractor, counselor, and chorister. Very first memories of Uncle Evans remained for life. Such was the first impression he made upon those who were lucky to come to know him. He had a most engaging, affable disposition that made all seem very comfortable and happy to be in his presence. As a tailor, he made the first suits owned by many children and adults in his family and within the community. The suit he donned during his funeral was designed and tailored by him over 50 years ago. As a contractor and carpenter, he never hid his skills from his apprentice, as was the habit in the early days. He also made attractive and affordable caskets so that families would have a reasonable alternative. Many can attest to having learned under his tutelage. He was a devout chorister and faithful churchgoer, one who inspired even the youth. He did in fact pick up a liking and habit of going on cruises, which took him to such faraway places like Alaska, Mexico, the Mediterranean, and elsewhere. But that had been a boyhood fantasy. As we reflect on the life he lived, a most notable contribution that he made to the entire island was during his tenure as member of the Anguilla Council, 1972 to 1976, Anguilla's first local government that was recognized by the Foreign Commonwealth Office. But quite notably and significant was the part that he played as a member of the fourth and last Island Council, which, as a body of activists, went on strike against the resident British commissioner. Feeling that they were duly elected politicians devoid of any real constitutional power, their reaction sent a powerful message to the FCO, which responded favorably by granting the island its fifth constitution, which heralded in our Westminster system of government. In his message for the 45th anniversary of the House of Assembly, there are many notable takeaways that he expressed directly to the Assembly and to the people of Anguilla. The people of Anguilla entrusted him and the other members of the Anguilla Council to serve them during a time of hardship and adversity, when Anguilla was trying to solidify its foundation politically, a time when we were most united as a people. They made grave sacrifices towards the growth of Anguilla, spending the first 3 years voluntarily serving on the council without compensation. As a people, we must reflect on how much we are and have been willing to offer to Anguilla's development without any form of compensation. Would you today be willing to hold the highest office in Anguilla voluntarily? He also was the foreman for the construction of the Super Cinema in the Farrington, where there were 30 persons under his supervision. Before Anguilla had taxes, he requested that all persons pay 2% of their weekly pay, which was EC $60, into the government's treasury. How much are we willing to give in order to make Anguilla a self-reliant country? As it was indeed almost self-reliant, Anguillians owned large ships that plied the Caribbean seas, planes, and the island had climbed the ladder of success. However, after we had got to certain stages, the island severely plummeted down that ladder and has become more dependent on the British government. His last message to the people of Anguilla, as one of the first members of Anguilla's first local government, was very clear. He spoke to renewing the unity the island once had in our parliament and in our citizenry. He expounded upon the strength our island had when we were rallying around a common goal, the creation of a self-reliant Anguilla. He expressed his optimism that Anguilla will not remain this way. Today, we reflect on the life of Uncle Evans. Let us use this time to commit ourselves to voluntarily display similar qualities, which were influential in developing the island from having no paved roads, no electricity, and no running water, to being a largely self-reliant island that is filled with so much more potential. May his soul rest in perpetual peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clemvio Hodge. And just for the record, I acknowledge the presence of Dr. Clyde Bryan and, of course, teacher George Hodge, who's in the gallery this morning. Welcome.
Adjournment.
Madam Speaker, I rise to beg that this honorable House be adjourned sine die.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second.
It has been moved and seconded that this honorable House now stands adjourned sine die. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This honorable House now stands adjourned sine die. Thank you, members. Have a good day.